For decades, Japan's work culture seemed, well, unbreakable, right? It was built on this promise of lifelong stability. But today, a quiet revolution is taking place, and it is totally reshaping one of the world's biggest economies from the inside out. Let's get into it. I mean, seriously, think about that for a second. One company, from the day you graduate college to the day you retire. For a lot of us, that sounds like something from a completely different time. But in Japan, this wasn't just some abstract idea. It was the bedrock of their entire society for generations. So what was that actually like? To really understand where Japan is headed, you first have to get a handle on where it's been. And that whole story kicks off with something called the Lifetime Employment Promise. This was so much more than just a job. It was basically a social contract. In post-war Japan, this promise of stability became the foundation of society. It offered this powerful sense of security and belonging in a world that was, changing incredibly fast. And the deal itself was beautifully simple. As a worker, you give your absolute, unwavering loyalty to the company, and in return, the company gives you lifelong security. This powerful pact was the engine behind Japan's unbelievable post-war economic boom, and it created one of the most dedicated and stable workforces on the planet.
But as we all know, things change. That promise, which once seemed so solid, it started to crack. And it wasn't just one single thing, but a mix of some pretty powerful economic and generational forces.
The main trigger was this really long period of economic stagnation that started back in the 1990s. You'll often hear it called the lost decades. All that incredible growth Japan had seen for years, it just hit a wall.
And this had a huge direct impact. The economy changed so much that companies they couldn't afford to hold up their end of the bargain anymore. That guarantee of a job for life, it pretty much vanished into thin air.
This created a massive divide between the generations. The older generation, they still held on to that ideal of corporate loyalty. But younger workers, they could see the writing on the wall. They realized that loyalty was fast becoming a one-way street, and they started prioritizing their own skills and their own career growth instead of just sacrificing for the company.
And this kicked off a whole new way of thinking. Instead of the company generalist who knew a little bit about everything, the market started to really value the specialist, especially in booming sectors like IT and creative fields. It's kind of like the mobility and innovation we see in places like Silicon Valley. That's the sort of dynamic energy that's starting to bubble up in Japanese tech hubs too.
Okay, so if the need for change is so obvious, why not just flip a switch? Well, changing a system this deeply rooted is not so easy. There are some major hurdles that are keeping a complete overhaul of the job market from happening.
The old system is still baked in pretty deep. Companies often still prefer to hire kids fresh out of college, and your pay is frequently based on how long you've been at the company, not necessarily what you can do. This means that for a lot of people, changing jobs mid-career is a huge financial risk, even if it's the right move for them in the long run.
And this gets us to what the experts call structural rigidity. Basically, the system is just too inflexible. It makes it really tough for people to move between jobs, which creates a lack of liquidity or flow in the job market. That lack of movement can end up stifling innovation and holding the whole economy back from its true potential. So even with all these challenges, the direction of change is pretty clear. Japan probably isn't going to become a job-hopping society overnight, but it is moving toward a really fascinating new model for the future of work. What seems to be coming out of all this isn't a total rejection of the past, but a blend, a hybrid model that takes pieces from the traditional Japanese system and from the more fluid Western markets. You can think of it like this. They're trying to find that perfect sweet spot. Can you keep some of the stability and the long-term thinking that made the old system great, but inject the dynamism, the innovation, and the individual career growth that you see in Western labor markets? That's really the goal here. When you boil it all down, the biggest takeaway is this. The era of just relying on a single company for your entire career is fading away. The responsibility is shifting. We're now in an era where individuals in Japan, more than ever, have to be the architects of their own professional lives. Which leaves us all with one crucial question. This evolution is happening right now, reshaping careers and companies across the entire country. Could this difficult, sometimes messy shift toward a more fluid, skill-based labor market be the very key that unlocks Japan's future economic revitalization? The whole world is definitely watching.